Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K, turning any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan, back for another Locked On Texas Tech special edition. It's the Matador Mob mailbag and a bucket full of questions to dive into today, Chris. Some of what we'll get into on today's episode. We'll get into some thoughts on something I know you've actually been texting with the mob about in some recent days, and now the general public learning some more about it. Some scheduling insight as it relates to hoops coming up just around the corner. Rumors, going to use that word with you coming up in just a moment as well. We'll also get back to something we touched on a previous episode, because we just got to check in as we wrap up the week. Future additions for Texas Tech men's basketball. One name in particular really on the radar right now with Ben Henshall. We will revisit that subject in just a moment, but want to kick off the conversation with by far the most popular subject in this week's mailbag, and that is regarding our man in Washington. The news now being reported nationally. We discussed it on yesterday's episode that Cody Campbell will be a co-chair along with Nick Saban of this commission that is to emerge from D.C. to tackle general college sports chaos. So looking forward to whatever impact or fallout, whichever way you want to describe it, could come as a result of these efforts. But we had Brian with a Y. There were double Brians this time around. Eric, we had Don, we had Feldman, and we had Edward asking about this. And in essence, I'll kind of sum up a couple of the different perspectives, Chris. They're talking about impact, specifically for Texas Tech. They're talking about reality. What type of impact can it actually have in general? And then I think it also is concerning the future of this sport and how Tech positions itself whenever more shakeup, more change is to come. So in general, let's dive into these impacts both near and far with Cody Campbell and this committee.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of opinion out there about what it is, what it means. I think some people are excited. Some people roll their eyes and like, this is a government entity and a commission that, that they won't actually do anything. And others are far more optimistic and everything. Here's what it means to me at its onset. That they haven't really, I think, made public exactly what the task will be. I think they're trying to get a wrangle on not just college football, but college athletics in general. And so what do we mean by that? Because right now the NCAA is just powerless, being sued left and right. That's why the House settlement is like important, because the NCAA can be like, oh, we can breathe again. No more lawsuits, because that's part of the potential House settlement that is yet to be signed, by the way, is we're now, what are we, a month into that? And now it's like been kicked the can down the road another like week and a half. So it'll be, I think the week of May the 19th would be the earliest that it would sign. So again, business as usual in the meantime. So this has to do with trying to figure out some of the topics that they have discussed, transfer rules, NIL, obviously, and then conference realignment. Because I think that, as we've indicated here, there's another shakeup coming. There's another giant media rights round to be had in 2 to 4 years. I think some feel like they know what may happen. Some are like, I don't really know what this is going to look like. And then, but I think the one common theme is something's happening, right? I mean, yeah. You're going to get some sort of something. Okay, so what does this mean for Texas Tech with Cody's appointment here? And so Cody was at the White House earlier in the week. I think this was the reason for this. And he's known Donald Trump for a long time. And, the tie between Donald Trump and Cody Campbell is Mike Leach. That's their I'm not saying this is why they know each other, but this is one thing that they have in common, because both have a lot of respect, and I know both miss Mike. And Cody was playing on those teams. Remember when Trump did the introduction for your team?
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, right? Okay, so that's kind of a link there. But
He's a throwback Red Raider fan, always has been.
Sure, yes, exactly. When Mike wandered into one of his towers and was like, "Hey, is Donald around?"
Right. All roads lead to Leach. I mean, he's like Rome.
It's a great story. So that's the common theme between the two. But then I think they've been friends, and I think Cody's played golf with him and all that. So we talked about that on the last episode. Okay, so what does it mean for Texas Tech specifically? Because whenever I hear somebody talk about this sport or this entity of college athletics, it needs a commissioner, whether it be football or whatever, and then who is that? Well, anytime you hear, and Saban's name has been tossed around a lot, there's but my immediate concern is, well, Saban's only going to worry about the SEC, or maybe he'll only worry about Alabama, or maybe he'll only worry about this, or he's got one way of viewing things, like don't pay these kids, or it's ruined everything. At the very minimum, now you have a voice at the top of the food chain there. You've got anything. The main thing that Texas Tech fans or administration or whoever associated with this, and this includes the conference and Brett Yormark, you will now become aware of anything going on. Nothing's happening. This is what's happening. This is like, whether it be politically and like whether they're going to pass this bill or this was introduced or this is what they're talking about. Information is power. Information is king at this point. And you will now not be in a position where you'll be wondering what's going on. Well, I talked to this guy, but then I talked to this guy, so I'm not real sure where the truth. No, you will have a seat at the table. So Nick may have the SEC's best interest in mind, or LSU's or Alabama's, wherever he worked. But you will now have say or an ear to the ground on what reality is. I think Brett Yormark is probably interested in this appointment. I know President Skuvanik and Kirby Hocutt and everybody associated with Texas Tech are very excited and interested. And it's just because Cody's coming at this from a big picture standpoint. He is absolutely, and you know what? I hope he is biased. I hope he does have and keeps Texas, and I know he will. Whether it be Texas Tech
lobbyists, let's get to lobbying.
That's right. That's right. I hope he is of the mindset of doing what's best for Texas Tech and the Big 12 and all that. But I think he has been really studied in the sport overall, because I heard a recent interview that he did where he's written a lot of these columns, but one of the things he talked about was like the broadcasting, remember in the early 60s, I think we've touched on that. And he was like, that's what allowed the NFL to go make a gazillion dollars, because they're all together whenever they're negotiating. And I don't know if
the NBA getting half the viewers, making double the money of college football.
Yep.
Because of these agreements.
That's exactly right. And I think that I'm not saying he's gonna, or this commission will have the power to undo conferences and all that, but another shakeup is coming. What does this look like? You will have direct knowledge of exactly what and when and different possibilities of what is going on. And I think that's good for Texas Tech. It's good for the Big 12. But that, because I even saw somebody, my man Phil, who's a big Tech fan, he's on Twitter and everything, and he hit me with, yeah, Nick doesn't want to pay players, and like Cody's going to say, no, we're going to play players. I'd be willing to bet you that there's a happy medium there. I don't think Nick Saban is against paying people, and I don't think Cody is like, like we just want to spend wildly. They are trying to find a happy medium there, because I do think, and I don't want to speak for him, but I do think that he wants some guardrails or some parameters. I think people are under the impression that Texas Tech will spend wildly every single year.
First, today's episode brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and more as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. And with the latest technology for elevated playing, you're at the cutting edge of gaming all the time. With Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and auto low latency mode advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds you need to compete. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. That's Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. To get started, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube third generation.
Texas Tech will spend wildly every single year. I don't believe that is the case. I think they would be opportunistic. I think they would take advantage of the rules as presented themselves. But I do think that they see that this isn't sustainable. And even though you're playing ball at the highest levels right now, I don't think that they would be necessarily in line to do that for forever or for the next 3 to 4 years or whatever the case. So I think they're trying to work together and trying to figure out what all of this looks like. It needs help, and it's important to the president. He said as much. He realizes how unpopular this is, and this is a bit of a mess they're trying to get a wrangle on right now. So anyway, that's how I view this based on direct knowledge of the situation.
Directive number 1, College Sports Commission Executive Order number 1, Chris Del Conte, Guantanamo Bay, enjoy the beach. I'm going to say that there's nothing wrong inherently in a representative of the blue blood variety looking out for blue bloods and looking out for, say, blue blood conferences. That's okay. They are keeping the ship rolling down the river here. So I'm all right with that. But what you've got to love, of course, for selfish Red Raider interest, I'm loving it. But I'd even say you don't have to be a Red Raider to like, this pair between Cody Campbell and Nick Saban, because you do have a guy that's representing it from a recent student athlete, recent modern era student athlete's perspective, number 1. Number 2, playing for a program that is of the variety of 85% of college football participants, more so, as opposed to the like 7 or 8 blue bloods that we all know are brand names and at the top of the list. I'm fine for having both of those sides represented. I think we all do, because it'll take those compromises and happy mediums between those perspectives to hopefully not only keep this thing going, but maybe make it better than ever. So I'm interested in this pairing, but I do want to touch on the second part of that question before we move on from the subject, Chris, because this is maybe even the more intriguing part, which is, in reality, is there actually going to be any impact, or is this one of those kind of exploratory things that explores, and we meet up for a golf weekend in Scottsdale and talk about exploring, and then we discuss what we found when we explored, and then it's over? What do you think, like, the real teeth of this could be, if there are any?
And that's very fair to wonder about that. Like, that's the low-hanging fruit with anything government related. It's just like, yeah, let's meet and talk, and then talk about what we talked about, and then nothing ever really gets – and if that's the case, I get it, and that's fine.
Sure.
But my point is, if that is indeed the case, Texas Tech will know this. Like, Texas Tech will be aware that, hey, there's really not anything going, or that it is going. And so, what
do you really think? Do you think this is like a different thing than we've seen before?
So you're asking me, I'd be willing to bet you that there's something that comes of this. Yeah. I can't say, I don't know what authority they would have. I don't know, but he will have, because you just think about, obviously, Coach Saban. Say whatever you want. He's widely respected. He is one of the best to ever have done it as a coach. And he has been, I think, this is all getting sideways. I want out, and I'm going to go broadcast and all those things. But he still is widely respected. And then Cody comes at it from somebody who, because I think Saban and Cody are very different and yet very similar. They ultimately want what's best for the sport. And I think in this case, we're talking about football. They want the the longevity. They want, some level of fairness. They want a clear set of parameters that are enforceable. I don't think either one of them is like, let's spend crazy, let's no spend at all. I mean, I think there's a happy medium there on all fronts, but I'd be willing to bet you, I just don't know what this looks like, but I bet something comes of this. Minor, major, that would be determined, but I'd be willing to bet you that as long as the current president is in office, this will have some voice and some, and I bet there will be other important folks as part of this committee. But one of your guys, one of your pillars is a co-chair of this.
I think maybe the circumstances of college sports have taken it to the extent that maybe it actually necessitates some real action. Whereas in other eras, yeah, we got some concerns and let's explore it, but I don't know, nobody's really going crazy over it or clamoring for it, so we'll just kind of let it be. But there's such a loud conversation about perceived chaos that maybe that's going to finally lead to something actually significant happening, or at least some guardrails of some type being established with some enforcement. And as I've already said, I think the chaos generally lies in the ease of player movement angle. So that's one thing I'd really like to see addressed, but we'll see. And certainly will be a little bit more interesting knowing that Cody Campbell is going to be a primary factor in this.
And it's funny you say that, because I do think, and I don't know if we're on the cusp of that. I hope that we are. But like, speaking of that, what you just said, we had the Tennessee quarterback and all the hubbub that came with that. He ends up going to UCLA, and then Tennessee was reaching out to Big 12 quarterbacks and all that stuff. We kind of touched on some of that stuff recently. One of the things that I think that maybe not everyone was aware of was, when all that was happening, is that the SEC did have a rule in place, conference specific, regarding player movement, that if you get into the portal in the spring period, you can't go to another in-conference institution. So if you enter the portal, you have eliminated one league, and whether that's enforceable or not, but I think that people were like, okay, no, this isn't something that he's going to do or whatever, and it turned out he didn't. I do think the Big 12 needs to have something similar. A lot of this tampering stuff that we touched on recently had a lot of involvement with interconference transfers. And I just think that's good business. You go through a full spring with somebody, and then you have the keys to their playbook or whatever they were doing. And I don't know, that doesn't seem to necessarily jive. So I would hope that the Big 12 would at some point come up with something very, very similar to that. Like, hey, you can do the whole conference thing, but only like if you go in December. I think once you've kind of gone through a spring, I think that's a bit different, because it's just a bit. There was an Arizona player that went to Kansas, got into the portal in December. He went to Kansas, went through the whole spring, and then he's entered the portal in the spring, and he boomeranged back to Arizona. I mean, so some of this stuff is just a bit off.
That's called an advanced scout.
and they don't happen to play this.
That's their fault.
They don't happen to play this year, but yes, but it wouldn't have mattered. He would have been allowed to do this if, and I mean that. I don't know, man. That's a bit.
I like this play from Arizona. You got to look out for these desert folk. They're crafty.
Yeah.
Anybody ever thought of that? Let's send one out, bring him back in. It's a Trojan horse. You'd think it'd be on USC's list. All right. Thank you guys for that question. This question, as we switch gears, let's get back to hoops. Ed, Brent, Landon, Patrick, Chase are all looking for a percentage, a feeling regarding Ben Henshall and how things stand as we wrap up the week, Chris. And Don was asking, should we expect a signing prior to the judge accepting the House settlement, which is, I know, a tricky question to try to answer.
Well, I mean, I think that would be the goal. I can't even, if you were to say to me, I bet he doesn't even have a contract from Texas Tech or Florida, I would probably disagree with that, because I bet he's been presented something from one or both, whether there's a signature on one or the other, or but I'd be willing to bet you he's not going to go too much further into the draft process without having something signed. Again, that can be ripped up, that isn't necessarily binding, but it does cover everybody legally, and it does give him an opportunity to create some leverage with the NBA folks, and then gives him a soft place to land if the draft is not for him and he's not going to keep his name in it. There's a lot of mock drafts out there. I mean, the process is playing out as we speak. I haven't seen him listed much, but that doesn't mean anything. And again, maybe things would change with his leverage if, because again, as I told you, somebody could be like, well, just use a second rounder on him and like stash him, but if you think that you really want this kid and now okay, this is what he's got to fall back on, we better take our pick seriously, or we may like him better than somebody else. I mean, there's either leverage or perceived leverage, either way. But I do think that somebody I bet has an agreement with him pretty soon. I'll just say that. Doesn't mean anything, and Texas Tech could be left holding the bag going, we had a lot of money committed, but we still need a guard because he's going to stay in the draft. And Florida could be in the same spot. But I bet that is not for long on a non-signed agreement.
All right, good to know. Thank you guys for that question. Sticking with the basketball theme, we had Logan and Scott, Roberto, as well as Rocky asking scheduling questions. One simply asking for any scheduling rumors you may want to throw out there. Also the name Lindenwood, something we're getting to know. I know you were texting with the mob about some scheduling things already in place, and Roberto specifically was asking about anything regarding a Dickies Arena event we should be aware of. First, today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it can be easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. You're going to love the all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money today. Use our code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com and our code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year.
There's going to be some folks that cover basketball scheduling and agreements out there. The Lindenwood agreement, there's some folks that just, this is like a cottage, like a niche industry that they tap into on different agreements and different guarantees, and that's just kind of what they do. It was reported that Lindenwood would be, Texas Tech has not confirmed this, but it was reported that Lindenwood would be your opener on I think Monday, November the 5th, which is the very first day that college basketball season is allowed to tip. And we all need to be paying attention more to the non-conference portion of your schedule. One, because of how good that you may be, and two, because you're only going to play 18 conference games now. Okay. So that's going to open up you're going to need 2 more games than you had. And I think you need to make sure that you've got some meat on the bone there with some opportunities in the non-conference as it relates to RPI and all those things, because there's 2 fewer games that you can build up all the things in the conference schedule. So there's been a lot of rumors out there about the Bahamas, the Nassau tournament. There's 1 spot remaining. In many polls, the number 1 ranked Purdue is already there. There's a couple of others, but there's 1 spot remaining. And I think there was some folks attaching Texas Tech to that was coming out of West Lafayette. That's must be the way the wind is blowing, or what they've heard. That's not been confirmed either. I don't think. And it's just funny because a lot of times you already know a lot of these things. Hey, we're in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. We're in the Big East Big 12 Challenge. We're going to Maui. And you kind of have a good feel for it. Here you are in in mid to early May, and you don't really have a feel for your non-conference schedule at all. As it relates to Dickies, the promotion folks that run some of those events are very interested in Texas Tech and making that an annual deal. I almost would expect you to play another game at Dickies. If it's not this year, I bet it's next. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that becomes an annual tradition. Keep in mind, you're kicked out of your arena for about a week in mid-December because of all the graduation ceremonies. And so it's a perfect time to go do something like this. And if you weren't there on that Sunday afternoon, it was a 72-67 final, I think, when the Aggies beat you. But this was 80-20, 85-15, 90-10. I don't know. Texas Tech crowd. It was completely full. And this is a game that JT didn't play in, and you were, but Kevin Overton, I think, played well in that game. But it was a phenomenal environment for a neutral site. I think Texas Tech would be very interested in. It's an easy trip. I think you could get a good. I've even seen some SEC opponents rumored. I think TCU was a part of this one and all that. So anyway, being long-winded there, I apologize, but I think that could be somewhat normal. Is that they've tried to. They're interested in the Texas Tech basketball business in December for sure.
All right. Thank y'all for those questions. This one from Wallace, still talking scheduling, but more generally, or maybe even more so in a football sense. He's asking about potential alliances in the future, saying recently seeing some scheduling agreements for others. Is this something Texas Tech itself could be pursuing? Do you think conference-wide it could be something that we see pursued?
So I think this is the Notre Dame Clemson agreement. I think this is genius. One, Clemson is in a scenario to where they get paid more money from their league if their games are viewed more than others. Guess what?
Good pick.
You just hooked yourself to the like. In other words, okay, this is in the same conference. But like if Texas Tech was in a similar scenario, again, you're both in the same league, but if you were in the same scenario and like your ratings were based on how much you were going to be paid, I would say it would behoove you to want to play BYU every single year. It's very similar in theme.
No doubt. Notre
Dame already has a semi-loose agreement with the ACC, and apparently this doesn't even count toward – because this is actually good for Notre Dame too. Clemson is going to be a factor for the long term. I don't know if they are if they're the belle of the ball as it relates to if the SEC were to ever expand, like some would think. I think some think Florida State would be, and then some think North Carolina would be, but they would be in the very short conversation. But this is you kind of okey-doked your conference brethren here because you've kind of guaranteed your spot at the lead of or head of the table as it relates to conference ratings every year, because that game could potentially outdraw any other game that an ACC team plays in, period. And you've got a 12-year agreement there. So I would say that if you ever got into a situation, it would be really smart, but it's not going to hurt you to. I don't know if Texas Tech is ever going to be able to do this because they've got so many things set up. I don't know who the natural fit would be that would make a lot of sense, that would be a willing participant. You can sit here and say, well, let's do one with A&M. Let's do one with Texas. Let's do one with Oklahoma. Let's do one with Nebraska. I don't know. Missouri. Just keep tossing them out. Although you would need them to want to be a willing participant, and it may be one-sided from your standpoint, but it was a good move, I thought, by those two institutions.
No doubt. And I feel like still I don't have many sentimental corners of my college sports world like left in my brain, mostly a jaded college sports fan over the years, but I still have some thought about regional matchups and wonder if state leadership at any point in time, even if it had to be some type of rotating circumstance, could gather up enough will and resource maybe to think about a scheduling alliance of that kind. Of course, there's some in-conference stuff, but also some out-of-conference stuff there. And I guess for the most part, at least in our circumstance, there are some seasons where in conference you're not getting those regional foes anymore. And that's a conversation we've had before as well. Would you be interested in seeing some of those matchups maybe return to your schedule in a non-conference setting whenever you're not getting them inside Big 12 play? But definitely an interesting idea. Do you think there's ever been efforts in order to shore up things non-conference wise, conference to conference, kind of like what we have in basketball, but in a football sense, to try to align and get those games going outside of league play? ACC to Big 12, Big 10 to SEC, or anything in between?
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you what I think that Brett Yormark has talked about internally. It's along the same lines, but this is different. Is I think they've talked about doing something with their own league that essentially is the same thing. I.e., let's go play some basketball games in December in Vegas or something with some of our high profile matchups that aren't, maybe they are previously scheduled and we'll do it again, or maybe these are ones that slip through the cracks. But let's have some teams play each other, and it won't count towards the conference standings, because there's a lot of options here, a lot of buttons to push, and I don't know exactly how. In football, you could do something similar. I mean, how many teams are you missing? I mean, you're sitting here saying, you telling me that it wouldn't be of interest, whether it be TV or the fan bases, if you were playing like TCU or Baylor in football this year? You damn right, It would be interesting, at least to your fan base, and I think to theirs and all that. But those games don't exist, not on Texas Tech's schedule. And I think basketball wise, now that they get to an 18 game conference schedule, I don't know, is it going to be most important to play everybody once, to have home and homes with a few? Or are you going to try to get a feel for who's going to be really good and showcase that? I mean, how fair will it be? But there's going to be some things that don't actually happen and that I think you could showcase otherwise. So, and that's another opportunity for revenue and all the things if the Big 12 was just involved with itself a little bit. But I'm sure you are amenable to all different kinds of things. But back to the point of like Cody and the commission and all the things, do we really have a feel yet right now at this very minute, like what you need to do and have done for like what's most important? Is it the biggest draws? Is it just stack up wins? And is it you got to have some schedule strength? Is it a happy meal? I mean, do we have a feel for that from a football standpoint? I don't know that we do.
No, they're all moving targets. It's kind of the way it's been for 15, 20 years, it feels like.
Because with an automatic bid, I would say now, because it unfortunately right now for a school like Texas Tech and most Big 12 schools, you can play the game of let's load up in the non-conference. If we get anything done, it will only help us. But really, it's just about the conference race. I don't know if we'll get to more than one bid this current year. It may just be the automatic qualifier, which means you just want to win as many in the conference and go win the league. And that's maybe all who's going to get in. If it expands and there's more at-large opportunities, now maybe at that point it does behoove you to try to beef up that. However, here's what you need. You need willing participants. You need somebody that's also going, okay, yeah, we need some of this too. Let's come to an agreement. I mean, you can say, let's go play this, let's go play that, we'll go whatever. It's got to be fair, but it's also got to be something that the other party wants to be involved with too.
And best suit your present circumstance. Somehow.
Exactly.
Like everybody's trying to finesse their way through this thing.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. And that's part of like with these evolutions, whether it's scheduling or whatever it might have been over the last 10 to 15 years, has been so frustrating. Just the moving targets. We're talking, well, you need data points. Well, this data point ain't like that data point. Well, okay, conference championship game is a data point. Well, wait, the conference is mandating Power 5 non-conference games. So isn't that a data point? Others, okay, well, is Weber State and a collision with a Big Ten team the same thing? Okay. It's just the things you've instituted or taken out or changed or altered to chase these targets that remain moving has been frustrating. Here or there, but I don't know if there's resolution. Maybe we're getting nearer to it now than we were when we began, but only time will tell. Thank you for that question. While we're sort of on the subject of football, let's make a hard left back to the Red Raiders and talk about our guy number 2, Baron Morton, the subject of a couple of different questions here today, Chris, and actually had 2 different guys that were commenting on sort of a similar topic regarding Baron. Had Ryan and Lance both asking about Taj Brooks gone, Josh Kelly gone, Jalen Conyers gone. Does Baron have another security blanket ready to go? What do you think about somebody that can be in kind of bailout mode, which is always helpful?
I'm sure he's got a better feel for that than I do right now. As it relates to the answer to that question, I don't know. I think that he's got a tremendous rapport and relationship with a guy like Coy Aiken, who I think is very sure-handed. I think he's going to be on the field a ton. That goes without saying, but can Coy produce consistently at the level of like a Josh Kelly on third down and over 1,000 yards and all those things? I don't know that yet. I think the possibility is there. I think one of the guys that has not been talked about enough, and it's funny because we've spent so much time talking about, I don't know, Lee Hunter or David Bailey or Romello Height or Howard Sampson, that I think some of your DBs have not been discussed a lot that you brought in. I think some of your current players have not been talked about a lot. One new guy that I think could, in fact, check the box of what you're asking about is Terrence Carter. I think if you were asking me of the new guys, I would probably put him at the top of the list over Reggie Virgil, over Quentin Joyner. I just think and I'm not guaranteeing that. I just say, boy, there's a lot that you've got in your past. And with the way I think Coach Leftwich wants to run things, that really puts Terrence Carter in a position to be an answer there. Maybe not the only one, and maybe just one of some. And I mean, and maybe the new guy, even newer than Terrence Carter, maybe Roy Alexander ends up being like something there. My thoughts on the running back. I just don't know if you're going to ride the back of one of these guys over the other. I think it's going to be by committee, and maybe that changes. Again, if you're asking me to put odds on it, I tend to think that Quentin Joyner would be the guy that is going to get the bulk, but that may look far different than the bulk that Taj got and the way it looks and all that, because because there's some that would say in the middle of the spring that Jacoby Williams was the best running back we had. I mean, I heard that repeatedly, and they can't tackle him. I'm like, even these really good dudes, they're having a hard time tackling him. But I also don't think that he's somebody that can handle, and I don't know if you want to do that to him just yet, where he can handle 18 to 25 every single week. So anyway, that's how I would answer that question, I guess.
All right. Thank you all for that question. We'll keep the theme going with Baron Morton. This question from Todd: I'm hearing all this talk about us running Baron Morton more next season. Simple question: are we crazy? But to hear the answer, you're going to need to be a Matador Mob insider. So hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial. For those on the outside, we'll leave you here. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you don't miss a thing, and become a Matador Mobster today for less than a cup of coffee a month, so you can get the full mailbag experience next week. Chris, on to the OT, man. Appreciate your regulation time all week long. Enjoyed it.
Hey, man, appreciate everybody out there. Guns up. We'll keep hope alive. All the things. Enjoy the weekend. Do something for mom out there. You got a little heads up here. But yeah, take care of mom. I know I've met Cowan's mom, awesome lady. I know my mom has supported me even when I didn't believe in what I was doing or we were doing or anything. She's always been top notch, man, and lucky to have the moms out there that care for rascals like Cowan and I. But yeah, go do something for your mom out there, people, and enjoy the weekend.
Whoa! I'm gonna get my lip to quivering before the overtime edition. We got a long way to go. I don't want to get teared up just yet. I usually save that for the end of the show. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Thank you all for being out there, mothers or otherwise. Have a great weekend, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.